So this is the S22 Ultra by Samsung, and I'll be honest, this is the perfect phone. Everybody who buys this phone will probably be satisfied with it, but does it mean that everyone should be buying this phone? So for me, it's perfect, and it's just a perfect phone in general, but should everyone buy it? Let's talk about it. Starting off the hardware and design, this is, in my opinion, it's a very simple phone. It's very basic, and if you were to see it out in the wild, you could probably tell, or if you know what the S22 Ultra looks like, you could probably say, hey, that's an S22 Ultra. But to most people, it might just look too simple and too basic. And it's definitely an understatement to call it basic. I think it looks gorgeous. I especially like this green color. It's more of a tealish, like a blue teal color. So it's me. It speaks to me. I love it. It's a very gorgeous color. And overall, the phone is just feels gorgeous. It feels gorgeous, feels premium. You're definitely getting, you can tell this is an expensive phone just by holding it. And also, maybe not by looking at it, but if you like look at it while holding, you can tell it's a very expensive phone. But if you've ever used a Note before, you'll understand what I'm talking about here. So it is a bulky phone. It is bulky, it is thick, and it's not heavy, but and to me at least, but to some it might be heavy. And it's definitely a big phone. It's like a Note-like design. So you got your curved sides, got both on the edges of the screen, like actual display, and on the back. So you got curves on the sides, and you got your flat bottoms and flat tops. It can be bothersome when holding it in the palm naked, but if you put a case on it, it somewhat helps. It doesn't take away completely, but for the most part helps. But I will say you definitely have to use a case or a skin because this phone is very slippery just naked in my opinion. So I would recommend a case. I personally use a speaking case just to help with that grippiness and also help with just protecting the phone in general. I don't use a screen protector at all, and for the most part, that phone still looks really nice. And the display looks really nice. Just overall, it just looks really good. So in my opinion, I think this is a very gorgeous phone. So at the bottom, you have your USB-C. You also have your SIM card slot. So if you want to enter your SIM, if you don't know where to use this eSIM, that's where your physical SIM will go. That's also where another mic is. So be careful not to poke the headphone jack remover tool into the mic jack there. I haven't done it myself, but something that I've noticed that it's very close to it. So it's a very odd spot to put that. They also have one firing speaker there. The whole phone does have dual firing speakers, so it uses Dolby Atmos, so it's loud and it's pretty good in my opinion. And if you put it up against others, I'm sure you'll probably notice this doesn't sound as good, but it's still pretty good in my opinion. And I will say that the one firing speaker they have at the bottom, I do wish it was switched with the SIM card slot, only because for some reason I'm so used to holding my phone an orientation where the camera is on your left hand. So that means I'm covering the one speaker. So I also always have to go and turn my phone and change it, which is no big deal. But it's just a habit I have of putting my finger over the one speaker, which blocks the sound a bit. But it's still a really good speaker in my opinion. Great for watching videos, great for watching movies, great for listening to music if you need to use it for music. I don't necessarily use it because I have other devices, but that's up to you to decide. But for me, I think it sounds pretty good when you're just using the phone speakers. And both your power button and your volume rocker on the right hand side, so easy to position to grab either way, whether it's on your left hand or your right hand. I will say they're not the clickiest in the world, but if you put a case on it, it definitely makes it very nice. They're also very slim and very tiny, so they're a little hard to miss sometimes. But I will say, again, a case will help with that. And you also have the S Pen. The S Pen here, it's nice to have, and the fact that it's built in and kept pretty much the same internals and improved internals, in my opinion, is absolutely phenomenal. But the S Pen itself, I don't personally use myself as much. It's definitely a very nice convenience to have. You're definitely paying for that S Pen if you can sit there think about it. But the S Pen, it's nice. The actual S Pen itself is slim and pretty nice to use, but I don't really use my S Pen on my phone very much just because the whole display is a little too tiny for me to actually take precise and organized notes. I like to keep them organized, and on the tablets a little bit easier. You have a bigger canvas. On the phone itself, it's a small display and it's a curved display, which means that if you're doing stuff on the curves, writing, whatever, you're gonna accidentally hit that curve if you're not careful, which then leads to a mess up, or you might accidentally trigger the back gesture swipe button, and it's annoying sometimes. So I'll do take notes every once in a while. I'll maybe sign a document every once in a while, but I will say it is very convenient when you do have an S Pen here on board, because you're like, I wish I could write out this thing, and you can with this S Pen. I will say it's rare, but it's nice to have. It's a convenience. You can also do air gestures with it, and I don't really use it very often. The only time I think it might be very convenient, and again, you might want to use it for those rare occasions, but if you do this a lot, is to use it as a remote shutter for your camera. So similar to the S22 Ultra, where you can use your tablet S Pens on your phone here. Again, you turn the settings on and turn that feature on, but I loved it, and that's mostly how I do it, and that's kind of a sign that the S21 Ultra was kind of like a perfect device for me, because you could do that, and that's pretty much why I liked it. But having that built-in S Pen, again, it's a convenience. It's just doesn't really improve or break my experience. I definitely like having that built-in S Pen if you want it. It's not a display. It is a curved 6.8-inch display. The curve's a little bit more pronounced than it was last year, I would say, but it is 1440p, 120 hertz AMOLED display. So whatever environment you're in, this is going to get super bright and dim enough for you, and very comfortable and nice looking enough for you to use in low light environments as well. So it's a perfect display. So whatever you do on here, honestly, dude, this is probably the best display you can probably use on any smartphone. Whatever you're doing, whether it's simply just looking at an email, it looks crisp at 1440p, and maybe swiping away from that email, it's gonna look very smooth as well. So whatever you're doing on here, watching videos, watching movies, shows, playing games, browsing social media, browsing the internet, using apps, whatever you're doing, it's gonna look very bright, very sharp, and just absolutely gorgeous in my opinion. So you don't have to worry about anything when it comes to display. Only thing you do have to worry about is possibly the edge displays. And I have no issues with them, only because I use a case, and so the case definitely helps with accidental ones. Occasionally I'll have some, but if you don't use a case, you might accidentally get those accidental touches with the palm. But otherwise, I have no complaints with the display. This display is absolutely gorgeous and absolutely beautiful, which leads to my daily usage and performance. And this phone is, like pretty much every phone that's high-end nowadays, it's perfect. It's really good. Occasional hiccups, but it's still a really good phone. And just to note, this is the second tier model, so I did technically pay $1,300 for this phone. It's got the HN1, 12 gigabytes of RAM, and 256 gigabytes storage. Non-expandable, which sucks. Samsung, just stop getting rid of features. Stop, please. But it is 256, so for me, that's more than enough. Right now, I think I've used up almost like 80 to 90 gigabytes of storage, so that's pretty good. I still have almost half my storage left, but even then, this phone, it better last me a while because it's performing so well. And like I said, chips and stuff, phones are gonna be performing, high-end phones are gonna be performing really well for the most part. Like I said, you will find occasional glitches and bugs, which I will find mostly with, like, I would say UI stuff, UI glitches. I wouldn't say because the phone is struggling to handle what I'm throwing at it. I would just say it's more of just one UI, weird glitches where multitasking apps won't work, or just that UI itself will bug out for some reason. And I'm sure that happens on a lot of phones, and like I noticed and used a lot of phones, yeah, it definitely does happen. But for the most part, it's a very great performing phone. This is a phone that I can rely on for pretty much everything I do. And most of my usage is mostly watching videos, consuming content, multimedia, everything from just watching YouTube videos to watching movies and shows, browsing social media apps. Like I said, the display itself is fantastic, and the phone handles it like a champ. It's great. There's honestly no complaint there. But multitasking is another big thing that I like to do. A lot of my multitasking apps or ways I multitask are found in the Edge panel. There's a One UI built-in thing. And I will say too, One UI is great on here. It's such a great UI experience in my opinion that it's so easy to use with one hand. That's specifically why One UI is meant for, or what it's built for, around try to help you with this big phones nowadays, help you try to make the UI experience more one-handed, and it does that very well. And I definitely like the Edge panel here. Makes it very easy to multitask, and I will tell you that the only time like I said, I will experience issues with apps that are multi-window that aren't supposed to be using multi-window. So Samsung takes it into their own hands and forces the apps to go into some weird dimensions, and that's when sometimes the apps don't function normally or where they might crash. So just keep that in mind. But still, multitasking is great on this phone. It's a huge phone, it's a big phone, and some of the favorite things to do is usually just use YouTube on one half and do something else. Sometimes Reddit. Sometimes I'll occasionally then go and play games, browse Amazon. I do like to do a lot of multitasking with my banking accounts, just to check in on my accounts all the time. And overall, it's a great experience. If you like to just browse around and browse social media, like I said, the display is very crisp and 120 hertz. So if the app itself is optimized for it, scrolling through the app is very smooth, and just reading text is very sharp. It's perfect for a lot of users. I'll also say that the camera is improved when it comes to some social media apps. Specifically, I use Snapchat, which in my opinion just hands out great picture quality. Video quality is still meh, but picture quality is amazing. You can use the ultra wide and you can also use the zoom lenses. So if you want to use your 10x zoom or your 2x zoom or 3x zoom, pictures look absolutely gorgeous on here. Stills look amazing. Videos is where it still struggles. So I do like the partnership that Snapchat and Samsung have. Just makes the experience much better for the user. For me, I use Snapchat all the time. So for me, that's one of the apps, one of the social media apps that I really love using. The other feature I really love in One UI, and this is something that I don't know if it's just tied down to One UI or Android 12 on the Samsung S22 Ultra, but the smart widget is fantastic. You can pretty much put a bunch of widgets into one place, just have to scroll around. So I like this for my home screen, when I'm not doing anything and just want to keep it simple. I have a clock. When I want to do stuff and get stuff done, I have my Notion widget with my tasklet. Just directly press it and it takes me right to my tasklet in Notion. Or if I want to check the weather, I can do so easily. I also have a couple over here on my other home screen where I can switch between my soccer scores or just the calendar itself and just keep track of the calendar. I also have my everyday usage like screen on time and just my internal stuff, my memory and my storage as well available. I will say though, keep in mind where you place those smart widgets, only because if you place them in a spot where you're scrolling around, it'll just be annoying and sometimes accidentally think that you're trying to just switch the smart widget and it'll read that instead of actually scrolling. That's just a One UI type of thing. So just keep in mind where you're placing those smart widgets. Personally, I keep them higher up. So for me, one-handed use, I won't run into them or have that issue very often. I was running into that issue a lot when I did smart widgets for all my widgets and it caused an issue. Just keep that in mind. But otherwise, I love that feature. Other stuff that they have is stuff like the app drawer where I can make each page customizable and also build in folders. I love that. The One UI quick panel is also very easy and the notifications itself are very organized and very easy to use and read. I also just love the quick panel, having things ready to grow or ready to go and use when you need them, Wi-Fi, whatever, flashlight. I love the way One UI organizes the things. I'm a big One UI guy, and I also really like Good Luck. If you haven't used it before, One UI itself already offers a ton of customization, but One UI offers even more. So much that I personally don't have the competence or the patience or just the knowledge to mess with it and to actually do a lot of that stuff. But the one app or module that I do use a lot is the Home Up module and One UI, which basically allows you to hide the actual like text from each app. I forget what it's called, but basically just have the app icon itself and you just keep it clean and simple. I love that. It also allows for be able to just be able to infinitely scroll, just do a lot of stuff. I keep it simple on the Good Luck app, but I definitely love that I have those options to really go and nitpick how I want to use my phone experience. I just love that about One UI. This S22 Ultra is also really good at just one app at a time, and one of those obviously is gaming. Gaming you can definitely do on here. Everything from the performance and just the display quality, both of those is great. So it makes games on here amazing. So I personally don't play heavy games and don't play for a long periods of times. Occasionally I will, but not often. And the heavy games I don't touch at all, but the shorter games, the light games, I don't even know if they're light on the phone or not, but for me, they seem kind of light. Probably the most heavy intensive is Minecraft and Pokemon Go. Those I play occasionally, but the shorter games that I play, like Rocket League, Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, occasionally Subway Surfers or Geometry Dash. Some games aren't optimized for this version of Android, so it does look a little bit weird, but they still perform really great in my opinion. It's just an overall great experience from the performance, like I said, to the display quality. If you're playing for a long time, or maybe you're playing a heavy intensive game, I will tell you that the phone does warm up, but it doesn't get to the point where it's too hot to touch or it's annoying. It's probably just the CPU getting really hot inside the phone itself. But I also think this is great for one-handed use, and one of those things is gaming. Game performance here is great. So overall, I do mostly use one app at a time, but occasionally I like to multitask, which is this phone has me covered, and everything I throw at it is great. And like I mentioned, occasional UI experience stuff where it just weirds out because maybe the app isn't meant to do certain things and you try to push the limits, and that's when you experience some issues, but not a ton, and it's rare. This phone, performance and daily usage, absolutely amazing. I can trust on this phone to do whatever I need to do. I can rely on this phone. It's such a reliable phone, and it better be a reliable phone for the price that I'm paying. Otherwise, I would be very unhappy. But this is a great experience using it day to day. Cameras. So you may or may not know, I'm not a heavy camera user. I'm very basic with it. I'm very simple. I point and shoot for the most part. This is a really good camera, and this is probably too much camera for me, but I like having a really good camera in my pocket when I need it. So for me, a lot of the stuff is very simple. So front camera, you got a 40 megapixel. Overall, it's very well, it's sharp, very colorful. It doesn't look too oversaturated or too undersaturated and look too dull. I think Samsung's colors are very nice. I personally am a fan of them. So it just looks really good overall. Everything from portrait mode to just regular photos, it looks good. And video selfies, you can take 4K 60 as a max. I'm not recording at 4K 60 all the time, but you can definitely do so. I just think it's overall a good front camera and I really like it. When it comes to the back cameras, you have the ultra wide at 0.7x, which may not be the widest in the world, but it's still pretty wide enough. You also have the wide camera, which I noticed does tend to be a little bit wider than most wide cameras, so it's pretty good at 1x. It's also very sharp. It's, again, similar colors. It's not oversaturated or undersaturated where it looks dull. So to me, like I said, the color science of Samsung phones look really good. And you also have the telephoto 3x, which again looks good, same idea, and the telephoto 10x, which is capable of up to 100 times digital zoom. Why are zooming in that much? I'm not asking you, but it is good to have, or just really cool in my opinion, that you have almost like a telescope in your pocket, in your phone at all times. And when you want to, you can take a photo if you want to. I mean, it's not the greatest photo, but it's still really cool. And same thing with like video, you can go up to 20x, so it's not as high, but having 20x zoom or 100 times zoom in photo means that the things below it or the zooms below it are gonna look great. So 30x would be my max, where it just looks sharp and good and just overall really good. So for photos, 30x is really good. For videos, 20x is where I would cap at and say it looks really good. You can also push this phone to the limits and record 8K at 24 frames per second, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's there if you want it. It also gives you, the camera itself, the mode itself gives you a lot of features, from portrait mode to director's view to a bunch of different modes. There's just a ton of, like slow mode, some that you expect and some that you probably thought, oh, that's pretty cool. So it's there if you want to. I'm not going to use them, but for me, the camera is a overkill for me, and it's a great point and shoot. I like to have a really good camera for me when I need it. It's weird to have all these features and all these lenses and then not have them, you know, because sometimes you might need them. So for me, they're overkill, but they're just really good. And battery overall for me was really good. Again, this depends on your usage. For my usage, I'm not constantly taking photos or pushing my phone to the super high limits, but I'm definitely using it a lot, and it gets me for the most part an average about the day. So I would definitely end the day somewhere between, sometimes I'll kill it, sometimes I'll get all the way to 50% battery left and then can use it half the way through the day the next day. So it really depends on your usage, but for me, it somewhat times varies. On my work days, I'll get anywhere from 3 to 4 hours screen on time. On my off days, I'll get anywhere from 4 to 6 hours screen on time. It's usually when I kill it, and when I do kill it, it's usually around 6 or 7 p.m., which is not great, don't get me wrong, but at least I have 45 watts of charging, which means it can cap up to a full charge at under an hour, which may not be the greatest in the world, but it's still playing fast enough. So that means that maybe to get to 80%, it will take like half an hour, a little bit under a half hour. So, you know, that's still pretty good, or just about 45 minutes. So it gets slower towards the end of the charging, but if you get to 80%, trust me, you're fine. So at 6 or 7 p.m., 80% is probably too much, so at that point it's still pretty good. So I like the battery. Some, depending on your usage, will get you halfway to the day. Some days it will only get you maybe to the afternoon, but it all depends on your usage. And you also have wireless charging. I like to use wireless charging when placing it next to my bed. I use slow wireless charging, so if I know if I'm under 50% or under 40%, I should say, I will wirelessly charge. If I'm over 40%, I'll probably leave the phone on my desk, and it's not that great when it comes to overnight usage. I'll lose around max maybe 10%, sometimes 15% battery life, sometimes 5 or 7, but it still loses battery, and by the time I have to get my day ready, I'll probably use that super quick charge to charge up fast in the morning when I'm getting ready. It also has reverse wireless charging if you want to use that, if you want to charge other devices. You also have the ability to protect the battery. So if you plan on keeping this phone for a long time, I would do so. But just keep in mind, you will reduce your battery life by about 20% because it will cap it out, or 50% because it will cap it out at 85% battery life. just keep that in mind if you're planning on keeping it for a long time. Personally, I'll keep it off because I want to use the full potential of the phone. But otherwise, battery life is pretty great in my opinion. It all depends on your daily usage. It's not a huge improvement from last year's, but it's still nice that they added the 45 watts max of charging. But overall, and by the way, it's not included in the box, so you'll have to buy that. I already had one, so I was lucky. But if you don't already have one, you might have to buy one or just buy a 25 watt charger. That's up to you. But personally, for me, it's been great. So that's it on battery. But overall, this phone is fantastic. I think this is probably the best phone, or one of the best phones you can get right now. Of course, like I said, it is expensive. $1,300 is what I spent for this particular, or theoretically is what I would have spent for this model. But there's always sales or promotions and stuff, and I got it under a promotion, so I paid $11.99 for the 256 gigabyte and 12 gigabytes of RAM model. So I was able to pay the base model price for the second tier model, which is absolutely amazing. But for me, if you were to get the base model at that $11.99 price, I think that's kind of sucks because they really decreased the specs because they included the S Pen. So think about first whether you're going to use S Pen or not. If you're not, then I would consider an S21 Ultra because that's cheaper. You can probably get it like $900, under $1,000 and get a very similar phone, but without the S Pen built in. And I know that's probably why they're charging what they're charging for and reduce the specs because of the S Pen in here. So for me, I think you can probably get the S21 Ultra and you'll still get a great longevity. You'll still get a great performing phone. You're just saving some money. But if you're thinking about this, just this, and every other phone around, it's so hard because $1,300 or $1,200 is a lot of money. And you could probably find other phones for similar performance, but cheaper. But again, you have to think about, do I need that Samsung One UI? Do I need the Samsung S Pen stylus? It's some features that do make it nice and convenient that give it that price. And I will say it definitely acts and performs and feels and looks like a $1,300 phone. But I don't know if it's worth all that money. So that's up to you to decide. I'm just here to tell you what I think. So I hope you guys liked it. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. That's it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.